In Angular, binding coordinates communication between the component's class and its template and often involves passing data. We can provide values from the class to the template for display, and the template raises events to pass user actions or user-entered values back to the class. The binding syntax is always defined in the template. Angular provides several types of binding, and we'll look at each of them. In this module, we cover interpolation. The remaining data binding techniques are covered in the next module. The double curly braces that signify interpolation are readily recognizable. The page title in this example is bound to a property in the component's class. Interpolation is a one-way binding from the class property to the template, so the value here shows up here. Interpolation supports much more than simple properties. We can perform operations such as concatenation or simple calculations. We can even call a class method such as getTitle shown here. We use interpolation to insert the interpolated strings into the text between HTML elements, as shown here. Or we can use interpolation with element property assignments, as in this example. Here we assign the inner text property of the h1 element to a bound value. Both of these examples display the same result. The syntax between the interpolation curly braces is called a template expression. Angular evaluates that expression using the component as the context. So Angular looks to the component to obtain property values or to call methods. Angular then converts the result of the template expression to a string and assigns that string to an element or directive property. So anytime we want to display read-only data, we define a property for that data in our class and use interpolation to display that data in the template. And if we need to perform simple calculations or get a result from a method, we can do that with interpolation as well. Let's give this a try. Looking at the product list template from our sample application, we hard-coded in the page title here in the heading. Binding the heading to a property in the class instead of hard-coding it in the HTML makes it easier to see and change when working on the code, and we could later retrieve this text from a file or database. Let's start by adding a property in the class for the page title. We'll open the component to the right and close down the Explorer. Here in the class, we specify the property name. We'll call it page title, and because we are using TypeScript, we define the type for this property. Lastly, we assign a default value, product list. With the page title property in place, we can now bind to the page title property in the template. We replace the hard-coded product list here with interpolation and specify the name of the property. Now, when this template is displayed, Angular assigns the string value of the page title property to the inner text property of this div element, and product list will be displayed. Let's see the result in the browser. With our binding, the page title appears as before. So we can confirm that it works. I've rearranged the windows so that we can see both the code and the browser. Now let's make a change to our page title here, and we immediately see it in the browser. So our interpolation works. So anytime we want to display the value of a component property, we simply use interpolation. Now we're ready to add some logic to our template.